Is everybody aware that we have prayer chaplains in our ministry? Yeah? And today it's Sandra De La Cruz, and she's available for prayer afterwards, of course. There's also prayer cards there that are blessing cards or gratitude cards. You can write on that, and there's a prayer box. It's a chest that's right outside the doors when you walk out that you can put there. Yes. And that they are prayed over by our chaplains, but also there's celebrations and blessings you may want to add. And then we send those to Silent Unity that's been around for more than 124 years. And the prayer vigil goes on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the next 30 days with your prayers. So it's an incredible experience. And I bring that up because especially now at this time at Christmas, sometimes prayers are even more needed. People go through some heavy times. I also want to point out that people may not know, but there's someone always sitting in the very back of our church. Have you ever noticed? Look back and you'll see someone in the very back corner. Did you ever know that? Have you ever noticed? Did you always think there was just maybe a strange person sitting in the back corner of the church? I don't know if they're strange or not, but that's our keeper of the flame. A different member of our spiritual care team always sits in the back and holds sacred space for each one of us, for our community, and for our church during the service. Is that not a beautiful gift also? So I just want to acknowledge our keepers of the flame that are here too, part of our spiritual care team. The magic of Christmas, Rachel, thank you, because it fits so perfectly with today's message. And I use this image because it kind of takes you back. There's kind of a little old school vision to it, because I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. Today is joy. In the Advent season, the traditional Advent season, it's about joy. So there's an anticipation of something that's occurring in our lives. And in this season, joy comes up, so we have hope that something is coming. And then there's preparation and peace, which was last weekend. And then joy comes up because we are anticipating something joyful to occur. In the traditional scene, it would be the journey to this miraculous birth. But we can take that into ourselves and see there is joy. Something is coming. Have you ever prepared for something, or you knew a big event, maybe a wedding or something that's coming, and you're so excited about it? Yet we also have to maintain being in the now, even though it's a future event. So joy comes up for us right now as an arrival. Advent joy is the soul rehearsing its welcome, learning how to receive the light before it appears. Think about that. We know the light is within us, but in this story, there's light that is coming, but we're joyful because we know it's coming. So we have to stay in that joyful space. Joy, have you ever heard of joy as tension? Is that new for you? Joy is tension. So what does that mean? There's a tension that stretches us between being in the now and being in the anticipation. The anticipation of something wonderful that is coming. It's like the edge of a wave. The edge of a wave that's coming. Something wonderful is coming, and it stretches us between being a part of the promise of what is to be birthed in our lives, but also maintaining present now moment, which is where everything is created. And then joy, when you think of joy, say a word that comes up for you when you think of joy. Just throw something out there. When you think of joy, Sandra, what? Mercy. Mercy. Oh, mercy. Mercy, yes. Absolutely. You nailed it. Joy, play, childlike, happy, giddy, Christmas. Yes, exactly. So joy is play is one of the easier ones for us to touch into, because the sacred delight that we talk about is not a shallow place. It's a place within us that says the universe or God is smiling, ready to dance and play. You like that? Mercy's ready to dance and play, huh? Yeah, absolutely. Children, yes. And that childlike space within us, biblical text talks a lot about the childlike wonder, that we come into the kingdom with a childlike wonder, because we begin to lose some of that play and delight as we start adulting. You agree? We get into the busyness and the stuff and the things we've got to do, and all that stuff starts to bubble away. And Rachel's saying about that, the magic of Christmas. We have to capture that, But this is not about a season. This is about something that keeps coming up for us each time. So I have a question for you, and I'll bring it up again later. You know, if I'm speaking, there's going to be a test, right? So, do we simply repeat the season, or are we changed by it? Do we repeat the season? So I know it's probably a both and. That we have certain things we do, have certain decor. We get out a tree. There's maybe a tree that goes in a particular part of the house or particular colors we decorate. We do these things. We go to these certain parties, these in-laws. We do these different dinners and parties we have to go to. We're stretched here and there. We do some of these traditional things. Maybe we hang stockings. We still hang stockings. We always have. But there's also a question for us to be in whatever season it is to say, am I changed by it? Am I willing to look within me and with around me and see there's an opportunity, there's a curriculum here for me to see Christmas differently? The tree, the beauty, the glorious songs, the experience of Christmas. But am I willing to walk into each season and say, I'm changed by it? And what I know to be true is seasons, those that stand out for us, birthdays, Easters, anniversaries, Christmases, are sometimes the most joyous and the heaviest. The deepest grief comes up for us. I know this so well with my own family. It comes up so powerful. And I have to ask my own question, am I changed by it? By their presence that once was? And am I moved into a different place because no one that has moved on to the other side wants us to live in a museum? Yet we honor and celebrate. Does that make sense for you? So the question is repetition or transformation? The season comes up again, same thing, do the same thing, repeat, habitual, or am I willing to be transformed? Am I willing to see something different? So this is particularly illustrated with Charles Dickens. Okay, hands raised, A Christmas Carol. So the giggles might be coming because of Will Ferrell's version, but also some of the more darker stories. The plays you've seen, A Christmas Carol can take you on a wild ride. And whatever version you've seen or studied or read, because that's a real meaning going on there. Do you agree? Have you ever watched a version of it or seen a version of it and it's made you stop and think? He does a really good job with that because the past honors the nostalgia, precious memories as meaningful teachers that help shape our consciousness without remaining anchored there. I think that's an important piece. What I want to say about the past is when we relocated and moved, I was purposeful about decluttering. Don't take everything with you. It's a powerful exercise and it's very difficult because things have meaning. And yet I knew for Christmas that a little bit of decor would go, but most of the decor was let go of. But something that had a date or a meaning or a story to it went. So now our Christmas tree is a treasure box of memories. And what's neat about that is I'm not living in a museum, but I get to take it out each year, look at it, admire, and go, oh, we went there. Oh, I remember that trip. Oh, I remember who made that, because I usually will date them and write notes on them. So years and years go by, and you have this story that creates this magic. But I wouldn't want to live in the museum of being surrounded by that all the time. I want to honor it for right where it is. The present is really about staying awake in this now moment, not living there, not being too forward out there, but being right here in the present moment with meaningful teachers that show up in every way, and our wisdom teachers in all relationships, whether you like the relationships or not, are our sacred teachers. And they shape our consciousness. The only place where life can truly begin transformation is right here, in these now moments. And then the future. So there's the story with Scrooge and going into the future that was consciously shaped by what's emerging, by choosing to love in the now moment and celebrate all the gifts that I have over habit and repetition. Can you see that? And I know you're nodding because many of us repeat the same story. And yet the story is there to honor, but we can see, am I changed? Am I willing to be open and receptive to something new this year? So we honor and learn from the past. We live fully in the present, and we intentionally create the future, rooted in love rather than old patterns. Sometimes the patterns aren't the greatest for us, are they? Sometimes we have to move forward while honoring and celebrating. Transformation as an idea is never just theoretical. It becomes real when it enters our own story. And I'm going to share a little bit about my own story. One Christmas story, one powerful Christmas story, and it's not one event, it's a lifetime with you that some of you, if you were here last year, I've only shared this story twice before with another community, and I'll share it with you today because it has a transformative element to it. So my brother and I, who heard the story about my brother and I last Christmas that were here? A few of you, okay. So my brother and I were born 10 years apart. I'm the baby, a family of 3. And if you can imagine, there's a big difference in 10 years apart. But what you have to know, that's the key to the story, is he was born with special needs. So my brother and I were raised, and mentally development was exactly the same. So at 2 and 3 and 4, he's 12, 13, and 14, but we're learning colors and numbers, putting sentences together, how to play together. So I have a really big brother, but a best friend, and we're getting into all kinds of stuff. Now, the best part about having a brother that you grow up with, and I'm 6 and he's 16, is we could get into stuff that a 6-year-old can't reach. And when we would go through the woods and go on trails and my little legs would get tired, all I had to do was leap on and we continued the journey. So the sacred gift for me was growing up with a brother that was my sacred teacher, that was truly life transformative for me. And as you know, Christmas and children is a really big deal. And so my mom created that as being such a big deal for us. So it was naughty list and nice list. It was North Pole and Santa. It was carrots and reindeer. It was all the things you imagine children would do in the magical wonder of Christmas. What was really big for us was writing out our lists. And we were really big on the list. Now, we didn't really call it fourth quarter is here. We called it leaves are changing and it's football season and it's Halloween. So we knew we needed to start getting it together on best behavior because Christmas is coming. And I want to say he was way more serious about it than I was, because when I would get out of line a little bit, he would say, "You're going to mess it up for all of us." And when he would get out of line, and I'm like, he did it. And especially when certain treats were in the top cabinets, I would say, "Ernie, get the Hostess ding-dongs now, no one's looking," because I couldn't reach them. That was a special treat. So life and reindeer and Santa spent a lot of time in our lives. And as you can imagine, now I'm developing into a teenager, 16, 17, 18 years old. Do you think I was still being that playful little kid about things, or I had other interests going on? And I can remember in my early 20s that I was home for Christmas. You know, my sister's older. She had just had her first child. Everybody's adulting. And I remember my brother, who was sparkly and delightful. Everything was either geared for birthday or Christmas. And I was home for Christmas, and I was in my early 20s, and he was sitting at the table kind of dim. And that wasn't his personality. And I said, "What's going on? What's up with you?" And he goes, "Look at everybody. Nobody's into it." I said, "Into what?" He goes, "Christmas. We're decorating, everybody's talking, people are staying up late. No one goes to bed early on Christmas Eve. You're out till I don't know what kind of hour of the night. You've got to be home in bed and quiet or he won't come." And I just realized in that moment, and this is a sacred moment that shifted my life. I looked at him and I thought, I'm forgetting the magic. I'm forgetting the magic that you mentioned in the song. And so immediately I shifted and I said, I guess we better get busy. And from that point forward, I went back to being that childlike wonder, that childlike joy of Christmas, the stockings, going to bed early, everything that was happening. From that point forward, we got to work on our list. And some of you may not get this reference, some of you will, but the Sears catalog was fantastic because we could go in there, and he had the most ingenious idea. We'd put our list together, but we would cut out pictures so Santa had clarity about what to get. What model, make of the bicycle, what color and style. There would be no mistakes. So we went back to our list and we went back to everything. And my brother, being special needs, he could never work a job and do what we were all doing in life, but he wanted to try. So he would go and make application at different places, and he would bring his applications home. And he had a lot of them, the paper applications, and he would fill them out and I would help him, and nothing would ever happen with that. But years later, my mom had made her transition, and she was the specific caretaker for my brother. And after her transition, he came to be with me. So Troy and I had Ernie at home with us. And what a wild ride that was. And something out of the blue happened that you just can't explain it. But at 45, almost 46 years old, he was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. And if you're familiar with that type of leukemia, it's a short prognosis. We did everything that we could. But here's another key that's a learning for all of us, is why I share this story. When you have the faith of a child and the lack of understanding of what doctors and diagnoses are talking about, guess what? He was like, and what's your point? Meanwhile, I'm worried, concerned, fearful, anxiety, going through this. He's going to go through chemo. He's going to go through a lot. And I've got all these thoughts in my head. And he's like, no big deal. Do you know that his success was much greater than someone else going through that, because he didn't believe in this power over him? He was like, I don't feel so good today, but I'll be better tomorrow. Bring me some soup. It was that simple. Now, as he began to lose his hair, this is really interesting. I was very shocked and kind of mortified by going with my brother through these experiences. And I remember when all the hair was gone, and he looked at me and I was looking at him, and we shaved off the rest of it. And I said, so what are you thinking? And he goes, I'm thinking that I could really pull off a good curly from the Three Stooges right now. It's really working. That's his answer, which means he was not bothered by it. And have you been through someone going through chemo and when their hair starts to grow back? His started growing back snow white. Now, I want to tell you, this was not our hair color at the time. We're a very black-haired family. But his hair started growing in at 46 years old, stark white. And I said, wow, that's something. And he goes, isn't it? And I said, what do you mean, isn't it? And he goes, Santa magic. And I said, really? And he said, and I'm going to stop shaving my face. I said, I don't know about that. I think you need to still shave. He goes, no, because it'll come in white and I'll have the Santa look. Now that's his response. As things begin to develop, and I had a small child and working and career, I realized that as he moved into hospice care, I couldn't do it at home anymore. And there was a facility so beautifully close to the house. So we went. He understood it, that he was supposed to be there to be the entertainment for everyone. And he kept everyone lifted up and their spirits lifted up. He had no real issues or conditions to really pay attention to, except that he was in these stages. One day, he called on the phone. This is June. And when he called, it was always something bubbly and exciting. And he said, I don't feel so good. Will you come? And I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, just come. And I can remember clearly, I was on my way to church. Me and Troy were going to go to lunch, and then I would go. He said, don't go. Come here. He never complained his entire life, so I knew something was different. So I went, walked in past the nurse's station. I said, he called and he says he doesn't feel good. He never says that. She said, well, it sometimes suddenly happens. We noticed over the last night, he's in the process. Skin, oxygen, things are changing, and the active process is beginning. And I said, just suddenly? And she said, it happens that way. And so whether I was in a little bit of denial or what, but he changed overnight. And I went into his room and I said, so tell me what's up, what's going on? And I went right into brother mode. I said, what do you mean you don't feel good? He goes, I'm woozy, I'm dizzy. They gave me some nausea medicine. I just don't feel like I can get out of bed. I don't know what's happening, but I'm not right. And I said, well, buck up. I mean, what do you mean you're not right? He goes, well, I would like to, but I can't. He said, but I've really been thinking about something. I said, what you thinking about? He said, you know all those applications I gathered? And I'm thinking, yeah? He goes, I used liquid paper and changed the top of them and changed them to the North Pole, and I'd been sending them out for a number of years. Have you never gotten anything back in the mail? And I said, Ernie, you can imagine my brain is going, I'm witnessing this happening. He's asking me this question. And I said, have I gotten anything in the mail from what? He goes, I've been applying for years for the job. I said, what job at the North Pole? And he said, well, it's not the elf job. And I said, what job? And he said, okay, look, the man is old. He's been doing this job for a long time. He can't keep it up. It's hard on his back. He's got to retire. I'm the perfect one for the job. And I said, Santa? And he said, yes, have you gotten anything in the mail? Because I've never heard back from them ever. I said, I didn't even know you were doing it. And in that moment, just like in my 20s, I went into that space of the magic childlike wonder, and I said, brother, the mail came today and a letter came. And he said, from? And I said, North Pole. He said, from him? And I said, yes. And he said, oh my God. He sat up in the bed and he goes, and what it say? And I said, it said, once this is over and you get out of here, the job is yours. And I began crying. The tears were rolling down my face, and he took my hand and he said, so why are you crying? And I said, oh, okay, so you just found out your brother is about to become Santa. It's exciting. Why do you think I'm crying? And you all know why I'm crying. He laid back in the bed and he said, wow, this is really going to happen. And now I'm worried. I said, you're never worried. What are you worried about? And he said, you know, when I get in the back seat of the car, I said, what does that have to do with anything? He said, you know, when I'm on a plane, I said, what are you talking about? Motion sickness? He said, yeah. You know, reindeer and sleighs, it goes all over the place. And I said, you've always done well with Dramamine. He goes, oh, yeah, Dramamine. I'll take Dramamine. And I said, but you know, Ernie, why are we even thinking about this? Because it's the magic of Christmas. It's Santa, it's sleigh. There's not going to be any motion sickness. He goes, oh, that's right. I'm going to have all sorts of magic. I said, you are. And I said, I can't believe you're going to be Santa. And he said, me either. And as the moments would go by, the next few hours, it would be a little less conversation, a little more quiet, a little more solemn, just the two of us, with a lot of smiles, a lot of talking about favorite Christmas cookies and the best presents, and that we really needed to get on that list. And we really needed to work on that list. He said, but what's so interesting this year is I'm going to be doing the delivering. And I said, well, don't try to get yourself into scheduling right now. Let's just talk about the wonder of this moment. Magic is for real. Transformation within us, within our stories, and I hope that story does something for you too, to know that there is a brilliant light that's alive in all people all the time. And those stories, as he said, now remember, you can never tell that I'm Santa. And I did keep it for a while, but I realized the transformation wouldn't occur if I didn't share that story further. So I do believe I know Santa. He's my brother. Our curriculum of the soul is so very, very real when we experience what we learn from day to day, from our experiences, from our life, from our stories. Each season offers its own curriculum if we're willing to be transformed by it, by our own stories, the stories that we hear, the magic of Christmas, the songs, wherever they can take you. We have to learn from this curriculum that's given to us. The hard things too, they're there for us. Childhood represents the state of an unguarded awareness where joy rises naturally and it has no conditions. Christmas symbolizes a rebirth, and play is the soul's language, because when we play, when we giggle, when we laugh as you have today, when we feel those emotions, we're a part of life's story. We're not controlling it. We're allowing it to transform us each season. So there's anticipation of what is to come, but it doesn't have the anxiety because it doesn't need proof that the magic of Christmas exists. The story I just shared with you is another piece of proof, and you have your stories too. To become childlike is to allow the divine imagination, and for those of you that are new to Unity, imagination is one of our 12 powers, one of the parts of us that we can be so creative and manifest all this wonderful stories in our lives and in the universe, because we're co-creating with God when we do that. After my brother's transition, I want to share with you the last piece of the story that will leave a lasting legacy. So my mom and sister had made their transition during the same process, which is unbelievable. But I was working with the funeral home to create the monument that would sit next to my brother and sister. And immediately they said, "What would you like on the top of it?" And I closed my eyes and I thought of it's called The Night Before Christmas, but let's see, it's the Visit from St. Nicholas from 1823. Clement Clarke Moore. Yes, familiar? Clement Clarke Moore's poem. And I closed my eyes and I saw that scene, and you can close your eyes and you'll see it too. You know, the night sky with the stars and the moon and the reindeer across the sky and the sleigh, you can see it on so many Christmas cards. And I had an artist etch that in the top of the stone, at the top of his monument. And at the bottom they said, "Would you like a scripture, an inscription?" And I said, "You know what? Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night" would be perfect right there. What it does is, in that moment, it honored my brother's love of Christmas and what he gave me. But what it'll continue to do is, you can imagine people that'll walk through a cemetery or pass by or visit loved ones. They may pause and go, "Santa, a Christmas sleigh, a Merry Christmas to all." And for a moment, it may give them a touchstone back to that magical moment for them of Christmas. So the story lives on. So do we simply, is the question I ask you at the top, do we repeat the season? Or are we transformed by it? Are we changed by it? Are we looking at the lights, the Christmas balls, the decorations, our story, our experiences when we gather with family? Are we looking at it differently? What's shifting within me? Am I growing? Am I stretching? Am I learning? Are we being aware, being the observer in our own story? Because I believe in the magic of this season, but I believe we carry it throughout all parts of our lives. I believe in you, each one of you that are here today. I believe in the magic of you that you carry with you. I believe all this that goes with it, that Rachel was singing about. So let us be in the joy of Christmas. Let us be in the power of imagination. And let us let the season change and transform us each time we are open to receive all that is given to us. Because I know with everything, if it's darkness and despair, you can focus on that, or you can move into light and love. We're always at choice. Because if it's of love, as my story was, as this community is, it is of God. There is no other in between there. It's of love, it's of God. And always remember that each one of you, and those joining us at a later time that snuggled in today, that are going to watch at a later time, just remember that you matter. I'm glad that you're here. We're glad that you're here. You are sacred on this journey together. And each one of you know, hands over your hearts. Today, Troy, it includes you too. Rachel, you are loved. Merry Christmas. We will see you next week. Yes.